The elusive prophecies of Revelation have been an enigma to most for several centuries at least. It seems the more we get closer to modern times, the more information we have lost regarding the understanding of biblical geography and prophecy many times. We prove this many times over on this channel, and so do others. But are those days changing? Are the modern dark ages over? Are we in the days of increasing knowledge as predicted by Daniel? Or better, is all evil being exposed with the light of the truth? We believe we are entering those days, and we believe it is time to know how to interpret Revelation 12 as well as 13, which we're covering here. We are the God Culture, a group of independent researchers with no affiliation to any denomination nor organization whatsoever. We read the Word and we test it, as 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. As this is the conclusion of part 13 of Solomon's Gold series, we're going to jump right into it. We made it through the woman, the man-child, and the dragon of Revelation 12, but we begin to tie the beast in the last video, and now we will overwhelm this with facts supporting the dragon as well. We found the great red dragon really is indisputably China in many ways, and it fits the geography of the narrative perfectly. With very odd language surrounding Scarborough Shoal as the possible specific location where the beast will rise out of the sea. Time to lay down more proof. Review it all and see what you think. By the end of this video, you will recognize the beast and the dragon in association with the land of China. Again, not the people, as just like anywhere, there are even believers and non-believers in China who are at the mercy of their governments regarding this narrative. And their government was taken over a long time ago, and we'll show you. They will not likely be aware of much of this, even as it unfolds. When you especially see the ties between the leopard, the bear, and the lion mentioned in terms of the beast, wow. Your head is going to blow off on this one, so get ready. Let's begin with Chinese dragons. What do they tell us? Chinese dragons, also known as East Asian dragons, are legendary creatures in Chinese mythology, Chinese folklore, and East Asian culture at large. Chinese dragons have many animal-like forms such as turtles and fish, but are mostly commonly depicted as snake-like with 4 legs. Just like, by the way, a dragon, Satan, and seraphim angels are described in very similar manner, by the way, as well as some of their offspring, the Nephilim. Just saying. They traditionally symbolize potent and auspicious powers, particularly control over water, rainfall, typhoons, and floods. Whoa! You mean to say Revelation identifies a dragon who sends a tsunami? And here we go. It's in Chinese lore? Wow. Not a coincidence. The dragon is also a symbol of power, strength, and good luck for people who are worthy of it in East Asian culture. Now, will the beast not be powerful and strong and offer good luck, falsely so, for the people? Yeah, another match. During the days of Imperial China, the Emperor of China usually used the dragon as a symbol of his imperial power and strength. Interesting, even before Revelation was written, perhaps? In Chinese culture, excellent and outstanding people are compared to a dragon. Again, does that not sound like a people who are desirous of the coming Messiah? You know, the false one, the beast? It does. While incapable people with no achievements, Remember, you're in a communist system, so if you're not productive by their standards, and we're going to show you a social score that rates Chinese citizens that is really going to singe the hairs off the back of your neck, coming in just a few minutes, are compared to other disesteemed creatures, such as a worm. So would a believer be considered a worm in Chinese culture then? A number of Chinese proverbs and idioms feature references to a dragon, such as hoping one's son will become a dragon. Well, we know this is treated as an idiom and allegory, understandably so, but in its origin, likely thousands of years ago, was it? Because the first emperors claim to descend from the gods and dragons, which are Nephilim demigods and fallen angels or seraphim, who do look like dragons in appearance, in fact, as seraphim angels look very similar. And you see this dragon worship all over the world, in fact, like the plumed serpent, for which the Americas are actually named, Amaruka. Yes, that is the origin of the name of America. Historically, the Chinese dragon was associated with the Emperor of China and used a symbol to represent imperial power. So get that, political power of ruling over a nation or people. Does that sound like the beast, perhaps? The founder of Han Dynasty, Liu Bang, claimed that he was conceived after his mother dreamt of a dragon. Or was it a different kind of visit? Nice. So, was he a Nephilim, perhaps, then? During the Tang Dynasty, emperors wore robes with dragon motif as an imperial symbol, and high officials might also be represented with dragon robes. In the Yuan Dynasty, the two-horned, five-clawed dragon was designated for use by the Son of Heaven, or emperor only. Funny, the emperor called himself Son of Heaven? Is that not the same connotation as the Nephilim, where the sons of God, B'nai Ha-Elohim, procreated with women, and yet some emperors in China claim to come from such gods, physically? While the four-clawed dragon was used by the princes and nobles. Similarly, during the Ming and Qing dynasty, the five-clawed dragon was strictly reserved for use by the emperor only. The dragon in the Qing dynasty appeared on the first Chinese national flag. So just as suspected, China is literally obsessed, as far as history is concerned, with dragon lore in its culture, in religion, in so many ways. Why? We will get to that. The dragon is sometimes used in the West as a national emblem of China. But didn't we see that China uses it too? Yeah, pretty much in history. Though such use is not commonly seen in the People's Republic of China or the Republic of China. Really? Because the same reference just said it has been in history overwhelmingly for thousands of years. Very odd that someone would try to distance in such a way. But see, they do try to distance themselves because they do not want to be connected. But this will not stop us, of course. Instead, it is generally used as the symbol of culture and government and even in religion, really, but okay. In Hong Kong, the dragon was a component of the coat of arms under British rule. So even the British used it. A tie to Britain too. We will get there. It was later to become a feature of the design of brand Hong Kong, a government promotional symbol. The Chinese dragon has very different connotations from the European dragon. In European cultures, the dragon is a fire-breathing creature with aggressive connotations, whereas the Chinese dragon is a spiritual and cultural symbol that represents prosperity and good luck, as well as a rain deity that fosters Harmony. Won't the world say the very same of the beast and Satan? They are good luck, therefore prosperity. Does the world not drink the fornication of the wine of the harlot and mourn her loss? And there we go again, the rain deity who will cause a tsunami, maybe? Now, to qualify this next part, let's be clear. The Chinese people generally have little understanding of the Bible. They are deeply ingrained in an ancient culture which really follows Nephilim worship, really. They do not realize generally whom the Nephilim even are. So, no doubt, the average Chinese person doesn't know these things and certainly doesn't know the Bible. The ancient Chinese self-identified as the gods of the dragon. Ouch! That's Nephilim culture indeed. Because the Chinese dragon is an imagined reptile that represents evolution from the ancestors and key energy. Evolution from dragons. Are Chinese people Nephilim? Not generally. But their emperors claim heritage directly from Nephilim and fallen angels. They just do not realize what this claim actually means. The presence of dragons within Chinese culture dates back several thousands of years, with the discovery of a dragon statue dating back to the 5th millennium BC. That's a long time ago. From the Yangshao culture in Henan in 1987, and jade badges of rank in coiled form have been excavated from the Hongshan culture circa 4700 to 2900 BC. Exactly, Nephilim culture from before the flood has permeated China for thousands of years, so much so they do not even realize what it is. Some of the earliest dragon artifacts are the pig dragon carvings from the Hongshan culture. Ancient Chinese referred to unearthed dinosaur bones as dragon bones and documented them as such. Why? Dinosaurs are Nephilim, that's why, and hybrids who were wiped out by the flood. This is why they generally disappear from history after the flood. For example, Chang Ku in 300 BC documents the discovery of dragon bones in Sichuan, Nephilim. The modern Chinese term for dinosaur is written as terror dragon, and villagers in central China have long unearthed fossilized dragon bones for use in traditional medicines, a practice that continues today. The binomial name for a variety of dinosaurs discovered in China, Mei Long, in Chinese means sleeping dragon. Fossilized remains of Mei Long have been found in China in a sleeping and coiled form, with the dinosaur nestling its snout beneath one of its forelimbs while encircling its tail around its entire body. Almost sounds like the serpent swallowing his tail. From its origins as totems or the stylized depiction of natural creatures, the Chinese dragon evolved to become a mythical animal. The Han Dynasty scholar Wang Fu recorded Chinese myths that long dragons had 9 anatomical resemblances. The people paint the dragon's shape with a horse's head and a snake's tail. Now that's really odd, because Revelation chapter 9 discusses a hybrid horse with a snake's tail, who return in the last days. These are not mythical creatures. They are real, and they will return, and we find them associated where? Well, with the very land from which the beast rises out of the sea, and Satan is cast down to earth. Wow. Chinese dragons are strongly associated with water. Yeah, especially tsunamis. And rising out of the sea, in fact. Aren't they? And weather in popular religion. They are believed to be the rulers of moving bodies of water, such as waterfalls, rivers, or seas. The dragon god is the dispenser of rain, as well as the zoomorphic representation of the yang masculine power of generation. In this capacity, as the rulers of water and weather, the dragon is more anthropomorphic in form, often depicted as a humanoid, ding, 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 dressed in a king's costume, a king, really, but with a dragon head wearing a king's headdress. Gee, wonder if he should have 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, sounds like a Nephilim, but again, let's not confuse dragon with the beast completely here, because the dragon is the serpent, the devil, Satan, a fallen angel, and the beast is a different form. So we want to be clear on that. There are 4 major dragon kings representing each of the 4 seas. The East Sea corresponding to the East China Sea, the South Sea corresponding to the South China Sea, the West Sea sometimes seen as Qinghao Lake and beyond, and the North Sea sometimes seen as Lake Baikal. So let's get this straight. Even China identifies the seas by dragons, especially the South China Sea, where the dragon falls and the beast rises out of that sea. Here's what's really odd, though. Notice the 4 small stars in the flag of China, which they tell us represent people groups in China, in which there are, well, far more than 4. So, no, that doesn't fit. That's not logical, really. Does this instead refer to the 4 dragons of the sea, perhaps? Just a question. Because of this association, they are seen as in charge of water-related weather phenomena. In pre-modern times, many Chinese villages, especially those close to rivers and seas, had temples dedicated to their local dragon king. Oh my, is this not a tie to the coming event in Revelation? It sure seems so. According to Chinese legend, both Chinese progenitors, the earliest door, and the Yellow Emperor, Huang Di, who was the first, were closely related to Long, Chinese dragon. At the end of his reign, the first legendary ruler, the Yellow Emperor, was said to have been immortalized into a dragon that resembled his emblem and ascended to heaven. Wow. This is a Nephilim principle, even in Freemasonry, called an apotheosis. Nimrod, for instance, went to heaven in legend and became Baal. That's the origin of Baal. Osiris, the very same in Egypt. Even George Washington, the first president of the U.S., is depicted. Go look up the mural on the ceiling of the Capitol building in the U.S., in D.C., and it's right there. That is the painting. It is an apotheosis of George Washington, where he goes to heaven and becomes a god. The other legendary ruler, the Yan Emperor, was born by his mother's telepathy with a mythical dragon. Since the Chinese consider the Yellow Emperor and the Yan Emperor as their ancestors, they sometimes refer to themselves as the descendants of the dragon. Again, not all Chinese people actually descend from these emperors, but these emperors are literally claiming to be Nephilim bloodlines. This legend also contributed towards the use of the Chinese dragon as a symbol of imperial power. Dragons, usually with 5 claws on each foot, were a symbol for the emperor in many Chinese dynasties. Again, 5 stars total on the flag today as well. During the Qing dynasty, the imperial dragon was colored yellow or gold, and during the Ming dynasty, it was red. So yes, the red dragon is an appropriate symbol for ancient China indeed. The imperial throne was referred to as the dragon throne, even. Wow, the Nephilim throne, really. During the late Qing dynasty, the dragon was even adopted as the national flag. Dragons are featured in carvings on the stairs and walkways of imperial palaces and imperial tombs, such as at the Forbidden City in Beijing. So, an historic obsession with dragons in culture, in religion, really in every fabric of their society. Are we establishing this well enough? Well, let's go into this a little more. Worship of the dragon god is celebrated throughout China with sacrifices and processions during the 5th and 6th moons, and especially on the date of his birthday. Notice moon worship is part of this. The 13th day of the 6th moon. A folk religious movement of associations of good doing in modern Hebei is primarily devoted to a generic dragon god whose icon is a tablet with his name inscribed, for which it has been named the movement of the dragon tablet. This is fallen angel and Nephilim worship, folks. There is no other way to view this. The azure dragon, Qing Long, is considered to be the primary of the 4, there's that magic number again, celestial guardians. There we are. Number 4, again, like the 4 stars in the flag, the 4 small stars. And then the large one is Communist China. It names the other 3, but you get the picture here. Dragon worship, symbolism, references, history, even bloodlines are all over Chinese history and infused into their culture since very ancient times. Even before the flood, when the Nephilim ruled the earth, including China. So, China is the great red dragon, overwhelmingly and abundantly, in thousands of years of history, not just current. In recent times, a very odd movement is occurring in China. Again, it is a society generally ignorant of the Bible, let's be clear. But as you see this hand sign in the video to the right, 666 is becoming a trend in China. Now again, do they even recognize what it is? Sure, they've heard the rumors, but do they understand? Even these references will show you they really don't. The Chinese language is rich in homophones, which makes it easy to turn numbers into proxies for words and phrases like 88 or bye-bye. That explains why 666, lu lu lu, refers to the Chinese word for smooth or skilled, lu, instead of the devil. Yeah, except for the writer of this article seems to have no clue that 666 is not the number of the devil. That is inaccurate. It is the number of a man, the beast who rises out of the sea. And he will most certainly be both smooth and skilled, according to the biblical description. So they are trying to distance themselves against a false narrative. And actually, they are just proving this movement fits in a sense. Is this the beast? No. but a forerunner of the kind of people who will fall right in line with his will and his worship, indeed. Despite the fact the number 6 can have negative connotations in the Western world due to the number 666 referring to the devil, again, false narrative, not the devil's number, but the beast, amen. In China, it works differently. No, it doesn't, because Yahuwah is still God of the entire earth, and you can't just shove his word aside just because it's China, the land where the beast rises out of the sea, and the land of the great red dragon. No, doesn't work that way. We're not an opposite bizarro land. Number 6 in Chinese sounds similar to Lu, which means to flow, and Lu, which means smooth or slick in Chinese. Again, the beast will rise from the flowing sea and will be smooth and slick indeed. When 6 is paired together numerous times to make 66, 666, or 6666, etc., these are actually considered very lucky numbers. Again, lucky why? Well, if you are in the religion that worships the Nephilim, and you are going to love the beast when he does rise out of the sea, especially in your front yard, and to you, he will definitely bring good luck, or at least appear to do so in the beginning.
Plans to give all of its 1.4 billion citizens a personal score based on how they behave. Ben Tracy is in China with what's behind the government's scoring system.
Good morning. The government here says it is trying to purify society by rewarding those who are trustworthy and punishing those who are not. So like the credit score that most Americans get for how they handle their finances, Chinese citizens are now getting social credit scores based on everything from whether they pay their taxes on time to how they cross the street.
When Leo Hu recently tried to book a flight, he was told he was banned from flying because he's on the list of untrustworthy people. Leo is a journalist who was ordered by a court to apologize for a series of tweets he wrote and was then told his apology was insincere. I can't buy property. My child can't go to private school, he says. You feel you're being controlled by the list all the time. And the list is now getting longer, as every Chinese citizen is being assigned a social credit score, a fluctuating rating based on a range of behaviors. It's believed that community service and buying Chinese-made products can raise your score. Fraud, tax evasion, and smoking in non-smoking areas can drop it. If a score gets too low, a person can be banned from buying plane and train tickets, real estate, cars, and even high-speed internet. It's a good thing, this woman says. There should be punishment for people who can't behave. China's growing network of surveillance cameras makes all of this possible. The country already has an estimated 176 million cameras, and it plans to have more than 600 million installed by 2020.
It can recognize more than 4,000 vehicles.
Xu Li is the CEO of SenseTime, one of China's most successful artificial intelligence companies. It has created smart cameras for the government that can help catch criminals, but also track average citizens.
This knows every person, every bike, every car, every bus. In several big cities in China, including here in Shanghai, the government is even tracking jaywalkers. Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face, and then publicly shame them on nearby video screens. Now, there are upsides for people the Chinese government considers trustworthy. They can actually get better interest rates at banks, they can get discounts on their energy bills, and China's largest online dating site reportedly even boosts the profiles of people with high social credit scores.
Ben Tracy is in Beijing to show us what a nearly cashless society actually looks like. Ben, good morning.
Good morning. So when I moved here to China a couple of months ago, I kept getting funny looks every time I would pull cash out of my wallet to pay for things. And then I got one of these. It's a code on my phone, and now I can basically buy anything here in China. When you pay for something, how do you pay for it?
Mobile phone.
On the streets of Beijing, cash is definitely not king.
What do you think of people who use cash to pay for things?
That's rare and weird, he says. Only the elderly and people who don't know how to use a phone pay cash. I rarely take my wallet when I go out, just my phone. That's because those phones can buy just about anything, from clothes in the store to steamed buns on the street.
One of the big reasons mobile payments have caught on so quickly here in China is because of what most people here don't have in their wallets: credit cards. They basically went from a cash-based society to a cashless one and skipped the step in between.
China has leapfrogged the U.S. into going to a cashless society.
Andy Mock is an economist in Beijing. He says China's cashless revolution has happened in just 3 years. From the farmer's market to the musician on the street playing for a mobile tip.
You can give a homeless person money with your phone. You would never see that in the U.S.
The fanciest hotels to the most humble street side shacks will all use QR codes.
The Chinese are comfortable doing everything on their phones, while in the U.S., credit cards and online shopping via personal computers still rule.
These kinds of legacy technologies make any adoption of newer generations of technologies much more slower. So in this sense, I think the U.S. has a little bit of catching up to do.
So, what do we know about the mark of the beast? That when one takes it, they will not be able to buy or sell. Does this not seem similar? We do not believe it is fully there yet, as taking the final mark of the beast renders one ineligible for heaven, which we believe will literally alter one's DNA, turning them into a Nephilim hybrid, which is irredeemable. But look how China is leading the way in the entire world, and very proud of it. Lambs being led to slaughter, and they are proud of it. Indeed, that is sad. China is the launching site for most of the beast's ideologies, his government, his religion, his mark, and most there do not even know this. And they are even burning churches right now and ramping up violence and rebellion against Yahuwah. Again, the people do not realize how they are being programmed and used. But check this next report out.
China appears to be tightening its grip on Christianity, according to pastors and religious monitoring groups. Authorities have reportedly destroyed crucifixes, burned Bibles, shut down churches, and forced followers to sign documents renouncing their faith. The AP reported the communist government's antics are part of its campaign to sinicize religion and demand loyalty to the officially atheist Communist Party. Beijing authorities also banned one of the largest unofficial Protestant churches in the city, citing illegal gathering. But head pastor Jin Mingri said officials were angered by his refusal to allow them to install closed-circuit TV cameras in the building. Now the pastor isn't sure whether there can be a resolution with authorities. Meanwhile, since President Xi Jinping took office 6 years ago, China's religious freedom reportedly has come under attack. Many say the government is trying to stamp out threats to its power over the people. But for Pastor Mingri, he said there's only one he's looking to. On this land, the only one we can trust is in God. For Global One, I'm Alicia Pacheco.
So, the government, get that, the government is even leading in persecuting churches now. What age are we in? We are not attempting to villainize the Chinese people, who largely do not support this kind of behavior. Again, this is communism in a very advanced form, and we'll show you how that ties to this entire picture in this video, and it's going to blow your mind. Remember again what lands we are dealing with here in this prophecy. The land that protects the woman, the Philippines, which houses Yahuwah's Holy of Holies on earth, inside the Garden of Eden to this day. In part 12, we narrowed down the location of the garden and the Mount of the East, which is in the garden, but also protrudes out of it through the ocean floor to form the island. What are islands? Well, before the flood, their ancient mountains. They were not islands then. The island of Kamagan, and its highest peak is called Hibbik Hibbik, which in Hebrew just so happens to mean sorry, sorry, where Adam sacrificed after his exile an offering for forgiveness on that specific mountain bearing such a Hebrew name. You'll have to watch that portion to understand how we reach that conclusion entirely, as we prove it out thoroughly. And we find the Mount of the East blew its top with its largest eruption in history, beginning on a very pertinent date to this topic, which really can be no coincidence. September 1st, 1948. And it erupted on and off through 1953 and quieted. Now, people lost their lives, and this was a tragedy. And if any other mountain, we wouldn't even mention this, but did something happen on September 1st, 1948 in prophecy to trigger this catastrophic event? Why would Yahuwah's holy mountain blow its top? And what is the significance? If you haven't seen this, it will be difficult to deny or ignore. September 1st, 1948 was the exact day in which Communist China was created, forming the North China's People's Republic. Exact same day. That gives me goosebumps. What are the odds of those two prophetic lands being so tied together as opposites in this event in prophecy? Wow. On the exact same day, Gog, the prince demon, Gog's forces, yes, that's where the mass Aliyah originated, which migrated into Israel from 1948 to 1952, which we prove. The lands of Gog, of Magog. Will show you not from the lost tribes' territories, especially those prophesied by Isaiah. It does not fit Scripture as far as the lost tribes are concerned. But on that exact same day, Gog attacks the Palestinian people completely, identified in Ezekiel 38 and 39. We cover that in Gog of Magog attacks, so take a look at that, but we will take a quick look at this map. Modern Israel is a 100% match to the territories of Gog, the prince demon, yet does not fit Isaiah's prophecy of the return of the lost tribes. 14 out of the 18 of the areas in which they came into Israel in modern times are not on Isaiah's list, and half of Isaiah's lands are missing as well. It is an epic fail. Add to this, they did not regather in peace, but perpetual war, which is a fail in prophecy as well. They did not regather in the vine of Messiah, which is an epic fail in prophecy, as over 98% still reject him after 70 plus years. We even tested the curses of Israel for breaking the covenant, and they largely, as a people, cannot even get some of the curses, as they have genetic disorders which literally make large percentages of them immune compared to other populations. Back to China, though. Is there more there that identifies China? And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his head 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So, he is not Satan, nor is he possessed by Satan, but the devil hands over his seat to him and gives him authority. Over what? Over the nations which he controls, which we know he has even since the time of Yahusha. Let's look at this creature visually. This beast has a body or foundation as a leopard, the feet denoting movement of a bear, and mouth of a lion, the mouthpiece, the fuel for it all. This is the beast, but note, not the dragon. They are separate, though working toward the same aims and together. We are not going to deal with the 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns in this video, as that's really probably multiple videos. And he has the names of blasphemy on his forehead, and those won't be names like Satan, but names which are manipulations of the name of Yahuwah and Yahusha, much more likely, which is why we put some of those there. Let's see what this tells us, though. So, who is the leopard? Well, we believe it is Germany. Germany may not even have leopards, but they have used them in their crests and even to name their tanks since World War II. The leopard has been certainly a symbol of Germany/Prussia, its former name, and there is a reason why it is the leopard as well, when you realize the other animals and their countries and how this all ties together. For Germany is the birthplace of communism, which is the common thread that pulls all these animals together and just so happens to tie to China in the end, including the reaction from the Mount of the East. Note, Karl Marx was from Germany, grandson of a rabbi. He was a theosophist, so they tell us, which is really a Kabbalist, and he was a Jew, following the footsteps of Shabbatai, Sevi, and Lurian. They are both worth researching because they dreamed of bringing about the conditions by which their Messiah would come onto the scene. Of course, their Messiah is equivalent to the beast of Revelation that we're talking about. And note, in addition to being German, Marx lived in Britain, and he studied Russia as a possible launch site for communism, which he believed would be a good one. Remember that. Marx comes from the nation of the leopard, where communism originates. And then what? The bear is Russia, a very well-known symbol. This political cartoon from 1911 illustrates Russia as the bear and Britain as the lion, the other symbol we'll get to. I know we are told these are at odds with each other, but it's just a thesis, antithesis, Hegelian dialectic, really. How do we know? Well, we'll show you. And Britain is overwhelmingly known as the lion. So let's understand this. The body of the beast, the foundation, is Germany, the leopard. Its feet for movement is Russia, the bear. And its mouth, Britain, the lion. Again, we are not calling the citizens of these countries the beast, nor associating them. This has nothing to do with regular folks. They have no idea what their governments are doing, nor a part of, especially their allegiance to Chief Prince Gog of Magog. So let's connect this. Germany, the leopard, is the origin of communism, which was funded by Britain, the Rothschilds, specifically, we'll show you, and first established in Russia, the bear. And yes, this all leads to China, the land from which the beast will rise out of the sea and where the dragon is thrown down to the earth. Can we prove this? We believe we can. In the first half of the 19th century, we have a history of China, which many know very little about. The Opium Wars were two wars in the mid-19th century involving China and the British Empire over the British trade of opium and China's sovereignty. What do you mean, China's sovereignty? You mean if Britain won this war, then China was no longer sovereign. Exactly. The clashes included the First Opium War, 1839 to 1842, and the Second Opium War, 1856 to 1860. These weren't short little skirmishes, were they? This wasn't just a simple battle. They were crushing China. That's what they were doing. The wars and events between them weakened the Qing dynasty and forced China to trade with other parts of the world. The First Opium War fought over opium trade, whose? Britain's, not China's. The British are the drug dealers in this scenario, pulling mafia tactics with the support of its government, and the U.S. government and the French government, in fact. Financial reparations. Well, for what? Well, for not allowing Britain to sell opium on their streets illegally. Yeah. That sounds like a fair deal. And diplomatic status began in 1839 and was concluded by the Treaty of Nanking in 1842. In the late 18th century, the British East India Company, whoa, who is that? That's the Rothschilds. They owned and founded the British East India Company, and they are the founders of modern Israel, and they appear in this narrative over and over. The question is, why? We'll talk about that. Started smuggling opium, so you do understand that. The Rothschilds are drug dealers. That's what this says. It doesn't come out and say it, but that's what it's saying. Smuggling opium from India into China, though various means, and became the leading suppliers by 1773. Well, isn't that special? Nice little drug dealers. How dare China stop you from killing their people? What a pathetic history for Britain, the U.S., and France. And the world should have spoken out on this one a long time ago, but this one swept under the carpet. By 1787, the British were sending 4,000 chests. One chest weighed 170 pounds. Now, it's really funny how the writer of this article didn't seem to be able to do their math in this article. Concealing is what they're doing. That's 340 tons of opium. That's massive. Of opium to China. The Chinese emperor passed many decrees, edicts against opium. In 1729, 1799, 1814, and 1831. Oh, how dare he try to stop the British, U.S., and France from selling their opium, their drugs, on his streets illegally. Nonsense. Why would you do that, Emperor? You know he actually appealed to those governments very rationally, saying, you don't allow this to be sold on your streets, and we ask you to respect our country in the same way. But no, they refused to be ethical, and instead, they sent their navies from all three of those governments to crush China. Isn't that nice? Sounds like, well, maybe Afghanistan? Almost, to a T. Even the opium, for that matter, and Iraq especially. But the trade flourished. Even some Americans entered the trade by bringing opium from Turkey into China. Oh, Turkey, isn't that where the seat of Satan is? and they are bringing that power into China. Good old US of A. Some of the American opium smugglers included the great-grandfather of U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and ancestors of U.S. Secretary of State John Forbes Kerry. So that's how you get to be president. You are in the lineage of famous drug dealers. By 1833, the number of chests of opium trafficked into China soared to 30,000. 30,000 chests. Again, they put this in diminished terms. Although 30,000 chests sounds like an awful lot, but at 170 pounds each, that's 2,550 tons. This was obscene and frankly, insane. Only psychopaths would have done this to China. It was wrong in every sense, and there is no way to justify this. Yet, these three countries did that, didn't they? And FDR, of all people, you know, the guy who started World War II in the Pacific, whose family made its money dealing drugs in China largely? What kind of foolish media allowed him to even run for office without exposing that he was from a drug-dealing stock? Well, I guess the same that allowed John Kerry to run for president as well, but I guess Grandpa Bush's funding the Nazis must have outranked his grandson, or outranked Kerry, so his grandson was somehow elevated above Kerry and won. Oh, but he did get in on that drug dealing action in Afghanistan, which increased its opium production by something like 80% thanks to the U.S. Great job. What a way to fight that war on drugs. Way to go. Nice. The Second Opium War during 1856 to 1860, British forces fought towards legalization of the opium trade. Now that's a noble effort, right? To expand trade in coolies. Those are cheap laborers. Oh, so that's the origin of exploiting Chinese labor. The British, US, and France. Very nice. That's awesome. To open all of China to British merchants and to exempt foreign imports from internal transit duties. France joined the British. Hardly mentions the U.S. in this article, who also sent its navy to crush China and assist the Brits. I know one of the big issues today are the Chinese triads who have been smuggling drugs into places like the Philippines. Yet, understand, China didn't deal drugs. They fought that culture. The British did. And the triads may have Chinese faces, but are still British funded and controlled. By whom? The Rothschilds. They are the drug dealers along with the power families in the US and France. The war resulted in the second group of treaty ports being set up. Eventually, more than 80 treaty ports were established in China, involving many foreign powers. All foreign traders gained rights to travel within China. So what impact did all this have on China then? Well, it was absolutely devastating. This was a complete takeover of its economy. And by the way, even British economists agree. Before the Opium Wars, China was independent and it was China. But after, no more independence, really. In 1820, China's economy was the largest in the world, according to British economist Angus Maddison. Within a decade after the end of the Second Opium War, China's share of global GDP had fallen by half, 50%. In another research paper published by Michael Semblast of J.P. Morgan, so the U.S. chimes in and agrees, and updated by the World Economic Forum. So now you have an international agency saying the same. This is pretty well put together. Similar conclusions were reached. Example, China was the largest economy in the world for many centuries until the Opium Wars. From this point forward, China has never been China, never belonged to the Chinese people, even when communism came, because it was just a package of the very same who already ran the country, because it comes from the lion, England, Britain, the bear, Russia, and the leopard, Germany. And that same combination continues over and over. You see them at play in China. So that was the 1860s or so. But the turn of the century, 1900, Britain was right in the middle of running China, as depicted here as the lion and bulldog with a bulldog head, operating from inside the country, mind you. Yes, because they'd already taken it over. And Russia was also encroaching into the land from the north. The bear, the lion, and the bear of the beast already at work. Notice Germany, Prussia, is also one of the nations at the bottom of this cartoon as well. So all three active in China even then still. At the same time, the exact words of this article say, the bald eagle representing the United States is approaching from the Philippines. The U.S. had already invaded the Philippines at this time. Wait, the U.S. invaded the Philippines? I thought they bought it from Spain. Not what this story says, is it? So, the leopard, the bear, and the lion already attacking and meddling in China way back then, at the same time the U.S. meddling in the land that's going to protect the woman, which has recently changed some. We know communism started in Germany, the leopard. But what about Russia? Here's the bear. The Russian Revolution of 1917 was one of the most explosive political events of the 20th century. Indeed it was, as it led to the killing of more than 100 million people, the most violent of any government concept in all of history combined up to this day. Until it exports its system, where? Into China. The violent revolution marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and centuries of Russian imperial rule. During the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks, led by leftist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, seized power and destroyed the tradition of Tsarist rule. The Bolsheviks would later become the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Was the leopard Germany involved? Well, we already showed you communism originated in Germany from Karl Marx, but Germany did more than that. The Russian Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, has gone down in history as the victory of the workers and peasants over the Tsarist rulers. No, that's not actual fact. Few people realize the German Kaiser was also involved. He gave aid to the Bolsheviks in 1917. Richard von Kuhlmann, Germany's foreign minister, gloated about his country's role in Russia's November 1917 Bolshevik coup. So, Germany helped fund the installment of communism, so the leopard is involved, and later would install Nazism in their own country, a different brand, really of the same beast. What about Britain, the lion? Well, understand that the current royal family were Nazis, which changed their name to distance their family from such. But the real story is the Rothschilds, who really took control of Britain long before, basically in the war with Napoleon, when they completely took over in one day the stock market in such a large percentage they basically ran the country from then on. Not themselves, but one of their bankers, in this case, from the US, funded the demise of the czars in Russia, thus installing the Communist Party as there was no other viable choice, and he well knew this, regardless of how many would attempt to deny this. His name was Jacob Schiff. What was perhaps Jacob Schiff's, a Rothschild banker, most famous financial action was during the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 and 1905. Now, this was setting up the Bolshevik Revolution. Let's call this what it is. Schiff met Takahashi Korikiyo, deputy governor of the Bank of Japan in Paris in April 1904. He subsequently extended loans to the Empire of Japan. Why? To oppose Russia, to get rid of the Tsar, because that was his purpose, in the amount of, get this, $200 million. That's equivalent to $4.3 billion in 2016. Though Kuhn, Loeb and Company, his company, what did we read correctly there? $4.3 billion? Wow. He wasn't playing, was he? And he just gave that amount of money without the approval of the Rothschilds? Really? Of course he didn't. He was acting on their behalf. This is Britain funding the removal of the Tsar. It is quite likely Schiff also saw this loan as a means of answering on behalf of the Jewish people, the anti-Semitic actions of the Russian Empire. Boy, we'll hear that theme over and over. Specifically, the then recent Kishinev pogrom. Now, we could offer several quotes that place Schiff as directly funding the communist revolution with at least $20 million at the time. But let's instead go to a Jewish source and allow them input here. It is rather odd that the Jewish theme keeps coming up in Germany, the leopard, also in Britain, the lion, and in Russia, the bear, and yes, you better believe it, ultimately in China too, especially as associated with, in all of those countries, the Rothschilds, either in relatives or in their banking empire. Can we prove Schiff was part of the Rothschild system, though? Indeed, Schiff was born in 1847 in Frankfurt am Main, Germany, to Moses and Clara Schiff, members of a distinguished Ashkenazi Jewish rabbinical family that traced its lineage in Frankfurt back to 1370. So they're Pharisees. His father, Moses Schiff, was a broker for the Rothschilds. Yep, he was associated, all right, with the Rothschilds, as were his partners at Kuhn, Loeb and Company, a Wall Street bank. And go look up their lineage and you will find one great big incestuous pool of Ashkenazi power families, because they inbreed amongst themselves largely, along with royalty and many other of the elite families. So, is it a surprise that before going to Russia to found communism, that Trotsky lived in New York City for a bit? It's funny how some view such things as coincidence, but it is obvious he was being prepared to take over Russia, supported by the Jews of New York City, ultimately the Rothschilds, who shared this theology of communism, which really originates in Judaism or Kabbalah. Why do we cover stuff like this? Because history connects and assists in proving out the Bible. Otherwise, we would never see this. From the times of Israel, Trotsky's Day Out, or actually 10 weeks of preparation being groomed to run Russia, is how it should really read. how a visit to New York City influenced the Bolshevik Revolution. Oh, you better believe it did. Again, this is the Times of Israel report. We choose this source for a reason. There are many who will come out and say what we conclude, but it's even here in language attempting to downplay the connection. In January 1917, strikingly handsome, are we looking at the same photo? Radical revolutionary Lev Davidovich Bronstein. Who? Yeah, that's the original name of Trotsky, the first communist leader. Otherwise known as Leon Trotsky. There you have it, from a Jewish source even. Arrived into this vast cosmopolitan cultural melting pot. Well, that's all of New York, but Trotsky lived among his fellow Jews, not in a cultural melting pot. Let's be clear. He was trained by them and funded by them. He was there with a mission, as one does not take over the nation of Russia 10 weeks later by surprise, especially not being called back there. We already know Jacob Schiff, the Rothschild banker, funded Russia's demise to the tune of the equivalent of 4.3 billion US dollars, and he further funded the Bolsheviks too. Kenneth D. Ackerman, a lawyer and historian based in Washington, D.C., has recently published Trotsky in New York, 1917, a radical on the eve of revolution. As if Trotsky and the Jews of New York did not already know what was about to happen to Russia, which they funded and had continued to attempt to even assassinate the czars multiple times. That's all on record, pretty well recorded. Again, history is connected. The book recalls Trotsky's controversial 10 weeks. There is no actual controversy, you realize, when you are about to take over a nation, which they well knew, and you are taken to a foreign country into a pocket of people who are funding the demise of the current ruling class in Russia on the entire other side of the world. Well, you know exactly why you were there, and so do those who are preparing you to do things their way. Or you will end up like the Tsar. Really not that difficult, and no actual debate can be attempted based on logic. 10 weeks spent in New York before he headed back to Russia to lead the military revolutionary committee, which carried out the overthrow of the provisional government in the October Revolution, which became the Communist Party. Surprise! Guess that just kind of happened spontaneously? Just as Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, what, on a napkin? No. Give me a break. This was a long-time aim, which actually goes back to the days of Marx and really the days of his predecessors, the Shabbateans and the Lurians, the Kabbalists, who had this aim, and really the Synagogue of Satan all along from the days of Messiah. See, they wish to bring the circumstances and conditions of the world to that of the rising of the beast out of the sea. Why? Because that is their Messiah. In several instances throughout the book, Ackerman documents how the Jewish community played a significant role in Trotsky's life. Right. He was one of them, carrying out their aims. During his brief stay in the city, wait a minute, 10 weeks? That's no brief visit. Yeah, it would be a brief residence if that was his residence, but he was just visiting for 10 weeks. That's a long trip, last I checked. Many of these Jews in New York knew Trotsky. Right, and they chose him to lead Russia, which is why they brought him to New York in the first place, and the rise of communism. As someone who had outspokenly denounced the Tsar for his anti-Semitism, it's amazing how they deal with this in a disconnected fashion. It's connected. So he was very popular. Indeed, he was popular enough they chose him to be president of Russia. Yes, For many years after the Russian Revolution, Trotsky was vilified because of his Jewishness. Oh, poor Trotsky. So see how their narratives always involve evil anti-Semites and persecuted Jews. They don't even have any creativity with these things. It's amazing reading this kind of stuff over and over. It's the same narrative over and over in the same tactic. Forget that they attempted to assassinate the Tsar, positioning themselves as enemies. But wait a minute, the Tsar's not allowed to respond to that? He's just an anti-Semite? His motivation could not have been a desire to maybe, I don't know, live? Because, well, he's not allowed to live, say the Jews, right? How dare he persecute those who tried to kill him? And some wonder how evil gets repainted as good in these days, in these last days. Well, exactly like that. But he didn't see it as a major factor. His Jewishness is what they're talking about. Right. Well, do you think the Jews would have set up a Christian to establish communism in Russia? No. Of course, his Jewishness mattered, and he benefited from it, or he wouldn't be in New York for the 10 weeks, and he wouldn't have run Russia. Period. Now, Trotsky was born Lev Davidovich Bronstein in October 1879 to a farming family at Yanovka in Kherson province, they called New Russia. The province now lies in the southern Ukraine. So where's that? That's in the very heart of the Ashkenazi origins. Trotsky always viewed himself and foremost as a Marxist cosmopolitan internationalist. You mean a globalist today. But same breed, and the heart of such movements are the Jewish bankers who fund these exact movements. And while he certainly didn't disown his Jewish background, he made very few references to it throughout his life. So did many other Jews who infiltrated Christianity and infiltrated Islam as Sufi Muslims, in fact. A standard doctrine, by the way, of the Shabbatean Jew, well documented. Most likely because he associated his father's bourgeois with his Jewish roots. Yep, so in other words, he was hiding who he truly was. Same exact tactic, well recorded throughout history among Jewish people. Not all of them, no, but many. Trotsky came to New York via Barcelona. That's Spain, the Jesuit stronghold of Marrano Jews, with his wife, Natalia, and their sons, Leon and Sergei. He was expelled from Europe for his radical views, well, also his behavior, of course, as well, as he was an agitator. That's how you get kicked out of a country, which called for a global Marxist revolution. Yeah, that will get you one thrown out of a country if you wish to overthrow governments. Yeah. And the overthrow of the existing capitalist world order. So get this, he wants to change the world order or bring about a new world order. Who does that sound like? Is that not what the beast will do? Now, the system needs to be set up before he even comes on the scene, and that is what these guys are doing. They are setting this up for the beast, as they are using the nations of the leopard, the lion, and the bear, and eventually bringing all of that into China. Trotsky has also served time in prison in Russia and escaped for his revolutionary services. So let's get this straight. The Jews of New York wanted to overthrow and were funding the overthrow of the Russian Tsar, and they invite this revolutionary, also a Jew, to visit for 10 weeks, just before spontaneously installing him as the new leader of Russia. Wow. How did that happen? Do they really expect us to be so foolish that we wouldn't understand what really unfolded here? We all know better. This was planned and very well funded. While Trotsky was well respected in the small clique of sophisticated Marxist intellectuals around the globe, well, yeah, if the term sophisticated means psychopath, and the term intellectual means murderer, perhaps, communism is the most violent and suppressive of forces, confirmed by history, as in its first 100 years it killed more than any government in all of history combined. That is no small feat. Who knew him from his razor-sharp journalistic prose? Indeed, he was probably a very smart guy. He was largely unknown by the general public or mainstream press when he arrived in New York in January 1917. Of course not, because he was being reserved and prepared for this purpose. Schiff has, of course, contributed to groups advocating the overthrow of the Tsar, says Ackerman. But once the Tsar was overthrown, Schiff, who evidently this author wishes us to believe was completely unaware of his actions, as if we are that stupid, right? He knew exactly what he was tearing down and what he was funding into power. You don't spend the equivalent of 4.3 billion US dollars and not already know the outcome of that war and how it plays out from there. Remember, he's a Rothschild, and they do not do things in a way that they don't already know who is going to win. Yes, they'll fund both sides, but still they will be the order that comes out of the chaos of war every time. Was aligned with the Kerensky government rather than his fellow Jew from New York, which he funded? Really? So, he was not aligned at all with Trotsky or the Bolsheviks? Well, maybe not publicly, but he knew exactly what he was creating. Come on. However, as Ackerman's book explains in some detail, the Trotsky Jewish conspiracy in 1917 especially took a very specific form. Really, where did it come from? Wait till you see. About the most credible source you can find. But you'll see. It centered on the most conspicuous Jewish financier in New York at the time, Jacob Schiff. And why wouldn't it? He doesn't get to just wave his hand and make the obvious go away. We're talking about $4.3 billion, the equivalent here. Okay? That is not a small thing. He deserves to be focused on. That's how it works when you're researching and investigating. Schiff had openly used his wealth to pressure Russia. Okay, so it's open. Everybody knew it, so why wouldn't he be investigated? Of course he would. Into changing its anti-Semitic policies. Right, wishing to overthrow the Tsar, which he did, and his own group was then installed into power. But he just, as the European royals, who were originally Nazis, had to distance himself publicly. But he did what he did, and the outcome was not a surprise, especially since Karl Marx predicted exactly this. They're playing out his aims. He was funding Marx's aims here. Moreover, Schiff had refused to allow his bank to participate in American war loans from Britain or with Britain or France as they allied themselves with Russia. Really? So further evidence, though, that Britain, US, and Russia are one. And to say the Rothschilds did not fund every British war since their inception is rather ignorant, as well as France. Whether Schiff did or not, doesn't matter. They got their money, and they got it from the Rothschild banking establishment in order to have their war. That was never an issue. So again, just a false paradigm. These guys think they can push history aside and get you to think in a vacuum. That's their tactic. But history is connected. Don't let them do so. The suggestion of a link between Schiff and Trotsky came directly from, boy, this is horrible. This conspiracy theorist, the U.S. government, specifically its military intelligence division. Really, so get this. He just told you there was no connection. And then he comes right out and admits the most credible force possible, the U.S. military intelligence, made the connection. Really? So he can't even agree with himself, really, as he just proved himself wrong and obviously manipulating a 11-lined false narrative here. And that's why we're using this, because we want you to see these things. Ackerman's book cites how MID, military intelligence, files from this period are rife with slurs against high-profile New York City Jews like Schiff and others, connecting them to Bolshevik leaders. Well, is it a racial slur for military intelligence to link Jewish bankers funding Jewish revolutionaries in another country that will become the antithesis, the Cold War enemy of the U.S.? What a ridiculous statement. This, again, is a non-point and really further proves his own narrative wrong. The U.S. military connected Schiff and other Jewish financiers in backing the Bolshevik Revolution, which is ultimately the Rothschilds. So, this book and article represent a rewriting of history to deny facts that even they admit, which disprove their very own narrative. So watch him further dig the grave for his logic here and prove our point. This is far better than sharing excerpts which prove our view and agree with it, because it is an opponent actually proving exactly what we're saying, against his own desires. In New York in 1917, there was a huge suspicion of socialist labor leaders and outsiders, he says. Yeah, there were. Right, and as he already proved, the U.S. military had documented this activity as fact and funded by Schiff and other Jewish bankers. Let's be clear on that. Much of this was fed by the labor movement in America, which is founded on communist principles, let's be clear, starting in the 1880s. Many of the more radical labor leaders were from Eastern Europe. Who were they? Well, Jews like Trotsky, and of the same belief system, because the whole labor movement is communism. Emma Goldman, who was Jewish, exactly, was also one of the most prominent anarchists at the time. And she was vilified for her political views. Oh, poor Emma. Poor Emma. You come out attacking and you're not allowed to be, put in your place, are you? Imagine that a government vilifying someone who, wants to overthrow them. Outrageous, right? This is written from the viewpoint that the government was evil for standing up for itself? Huh? This is because, just as with political correctness today, this is a very effective tactic of these Jewish revolutionaries, even to today. They are Pharisees. That's why. They scream anti-Semite and form the narrative in a way that you are actually considered evil for even defending yourself from their attack. We get that on this channel all the time, and we will defend ourselves. So, talk about backwards, really backwards. The city was famous for its exploitative labor. Sounds like China. Interesting. Immigrants made up most of the workers. Sweatshops were the norm. And sweatshops were run by, Jews mainly. Quite the oxymoron. And people often worked up to 10 hours straight, hoping to earn maybe $1 for their effort. Consequently, a labor movement began to emerge, again founded on communist principles. And that's very clear if you go back and read any of the labor movement materials from the very beginning. It is absolutely 100% two things. Number one, communist. Number two, they actually give credit to the very first protester, the very first revolutionary. Do you know what his name was? Well, that'd be in the Garden of Eden. They're talking about Lucifer, Satan. And they say that in their materials. Go look it up. Jews were very active in radical movements in Union. Well, that would be the reason why the government was looking at them, wouldn't it be? And as Jewish leaders became more visible, Trotsky became exhibit number one, as he should have been. He was exhibit number one. Trotsky's name thus became associated with two major conspiracy theories. Did this guy not already prove these theories were facts? Yeah, he did. But he'll still call them conspiracy theories in order to get you to back off of them. You can't believe a conspiracy theory, even if it's fact? Yeah, test that. Almost done with this article, but we wanted to be fair and share his full words, and they are very telling. The first was known as the German libel. By whom? By Jews who labeled it that way, to scare people with such language. Like blood libel, you also hear, because how dare anyone observe what is going on, like even the U.S. military intelligence, and record facts? No. The charge that the Bolshevik Revolution was a mere creature of the German military effort to defeat Russia in World War I. Yet that is not what the MID was saying, was it? They were just recording that Jewish bankers were funding communism from the U.S., and as we showed you, they are Rothschild bankers. But that anonymity soon faded. By October that year, as one of the leaders of the Bolshevik Revolution, Trotsky became a figure with a global impact. Exactly. And that was no accident. He founded the Red Army, commanding it with vicious, bloodthirsty gusto. Yes, because he was a psychopath, which he had purposed all along. His financiers were well aware and continued to support his effort. And he was a principal figure in the early years of the Communist International. The October Revolution would transform the course of 20th century history, and by the way, of all history moving forward after that, really. And Trotsky, along with Lenin, played a prominent role in that transformation. And Stalin did as well. Indeed, and no accident. Those epic events, however, were still a few months away. In New York, between January and March of 1917, Trotsky was still building his reputation. Right, and collecting money and being groomed to take over Russia. As a radical intellectual, no, psychopath, who posed a threat to the capitalist global world hegemony. Except they benefited from his brand of communism, so he really didn't attack the world leadership. Not the Rothschilds, he didn't. They backed him. And as Ackerman's book recalls, until April 1917, the U.S. had still not entered World War I. The Rothschilds will change that, however, and they will receive the land called Palestine in 1917 as their payment for bringing the U.S. into the end of World War I, turning the tide in Britain's favor. So let's not think that the U.S. government was independent of the Rothschilds and other Jewish bankers, especially these guys in New York. Many Jews and Russians immigrants in New York, the most anti-war city in the U.S. at the time, really, publicly voiced their opposition to America's involvement. Right, publicly, while the Jewish Rothschilds made it happen. These Jews viewed it as helping the Tsar. So this was a one-issue people, and supposedly they did not support the communist overthrow of the Tsar. Again, it's double talk. Which was war, by the way, who had promoted the anti-Semitism that drove them out of Russia in the first place. Trotsky was among those figures leading the anti-war protests. Really, Trotsky, anti-war? Right. And both in public speeches and in newspaper articles. Talk about a double-minded man. Anti-war, yet toppled the Tsar with war and established a system which murdered 60 million people. And you call that anti-war? Yeah, right. How about writing history accurately? That were printed in the New York Yiddish Jewish press. This helped create a period of intense paranoia among the political class, especially against Jews and Eastern Europeans across the world. Rightfully so. The point of this entire article is to demonstrate the obvious. The Rothschilds funded the Bolshevik Revolution and placed them in power in Russia for the first installation of a communist nation in the land of the bear, funded by the lion. And it all started in the land of the leopard, Germany. Let's put this all together so it makes sense. Historians confirm Karl Marx was employed by the Rothschilds. Historians have confirmed that Karl Marx was not only related to, so yes, he's related to them as well, the Rothschilds, but was also employed as their agent in order to subvert democracy and corrupt the socialist movement. HenryMacau.com reports he used to visit the Red Lion pub at Great Windmill Street, Soho, where he and Frederick Engels were asked to write what became the Communist Manifesto. Asked by whom? That's the question. His best-known work is the book Das Kapital, which fails to mention that money is printed out of thin air and by his cousins, the Rothschilds. One of Marx's grandparents was Nanette Salomon Barent Cohen, who belonged to a wealthy Amsterdam family. Her cousin had married Nathan Meyer Rothschild and bore Lionel Nathan Rothschild, Baron, and a member of Parliament for the City of London. Here's an interesting quote. And again, this was well known in those times. This world is now, at least for the most part, at the disposal of Marx on the one hand and of Rothschild on the other. This may seem strange. What can there be in common between socialism and a leading bank? The point is that authoritarian socialism, Marxist communism, demands a strong centralization of the state. And where there is centralization of the state, there must necessarily be a central bank. And where such a bank exists, speculating with the labor of the people will be found. That's from Mikhail Bakunin, professor, in 1869. So yes, people saw this even back then. Communism is not a system of the people. It creates an ultra-elite at the top who are beyond question, and they suck up all the resources of the nation for themselves. And literally we're seeing that in governments all over the world, not just ones that we call communists, but this system has still been installed nevertheless, even in the U.S. That most certainly is the beast system, and you are watching it unfold in history right here. Through the Barent Cohen family of Amsterdam, Karl Marx is related to the Rothschilds. They are the same family. Here you see the genealogy ending with Karl Marx. Again, that's not his given birth name, which was a Jewish one. And notice the Rothschilds from the same most specifically the very Rothschild whom the Balfour Declaration was addressed in 1917 when Britain gave the land of Palestine to the Rothschilds. Lionel Walter Rothschild. These guys are the same family, working toward the same Shabbatean aim to bring the conditions which will bring their Messiah onto the scene. That Messiah is the beast that rises out of the sea, and no surprise, they are tied to this whole narrative. If you watched our Gog attacks Magog videos, we map out the territories of Gog, the prince demon, who will attack Israel. Gog's power is not Russia initially. That's not the seat of his power. That is where he was born, in Magog, but not the seat of his power. The seat of his power is Tubal and Meshech, which is Western and Central Europe, specifically Germany, the leopard, and Britain, the lion. And he took over Magog, Russia, the bear, through communism, through those two lands. This is the advancement of Gog, the prince demon, to prepare for the rising of the beast. This dangerous ideology started in the leopard, Germany, or Tubal, seat of Gog's power. It was funded by the Rothschilds, so Britain, the lion, or Meshech, the other seat of Gog's power. And just as Marx predicted and wanted, it was first installed in Russia, the bear. There we have the structure of the beast in plain view. The foundation or body of the leopard, Germany, the feet of the bear, Russia, or the first successful movement of communism, and funded by the mouthpiece, Britain, the mouth of the lion. Now this fits. So where does China come in? Well, China is the apex of this movement. The nation was already taken over in the 1800s by Britain, the lion, with encroachment by the bear, Russia, and with the support of the leopard, Germany. Communism flourishes there to this day, and no matter whether they supposedly modify it or not, its aims remain the same, preparing the way for the one world government, economy, and religion, and the rise of the beast out of the sea in that exact area, in the land of the great red dragon. Not because Chinese people have anything to do with this, but because this is the plan for one world government and the plan for the rise of the beast. And even includes the fall of Satan, all wrapped into that same land. The Philippines will stand against all of this, along with Kurdistan especially. We cover that in the Two Witnesses video. And many around the world will oppose it, especially believers, because they know what this represents. But governments will sign on otherwise, and many already have. And need I mention, you are essentially looking at the areas where World War II played out? That is no coincidence. It was the leopard versus the lion. The bear played both sides. China was invaded by Japan, and even the land that protects the woman in Revelation 12 was invaded by China as well. And really, World War I, the order out of the chaos of World War I, the occult aim, was to set up the conditions for World War II. The establishment of communism in Russia, which it did, and it gave the land of Palestine to the Rothschilds. Wow. The order out of chaos of World War II was the expansion of communism into China, the crushing of the land that protects the woman in the future, the Philippines, the economic rewarding of Japan for their conquering behavior, and Israel is established as a nation. And what happens? The Mount of the East blew its top prophetically on the very day in which communism is established in China, which is the same exact day in which Gog, the prince demon, began to conquer the land of Palestine, Israel. Prophecy has certainly began playing out in large view, and we can all see it for ourselves. But it's been pretty obscured in much of the church, who still follows Zionism. So they just aren't going to be able to see prophecy when they do that, which is an offshoot really of the same brand of Jewish communism. One last observation, which also supports this. Remember, we looked at the Philippines map, and it literally looks like the figure of a woman with legs and a crown. But what about China? When you take a look at that map, what do you see? Talk about odd. Are we the only ones that see the very head of a demon or dragon at the top of the map of China? We can even see the form of a goatee, a face, and horns, and it is looking down at the land that protects the woman, in fact, the Philippines. Very odd indeed. In conclusion, the great red dragon where Satan falls to earth will be China. And Revelation 12 from that point on earth plays out in the Philippines, which protects the woman, and the South China Sea, which China is attempting to take over perhaps prophetically. The beast will rise out of that sea, perhaps even in the area of Scarborough Shoal. And the complete progression of the beast as demonstrated in his figure of the leopard, Germany, bear, Russia, and lion, Britain, tell the exact story of the migration of communism, which ends in China, the land of the great red dragon and the beast. Wow, this is fascinating. Again, we know this is prophecy, and some may not agree with our full interpretation, and that's okay. But we have certainly fully proven this out as far as we can at this point. And we feel very comfortable with these conclusions. We firmly believe this is ground zero for the end times playing out, and we fully identified it from Revelation 12 and the first part of 13. But as always, test everything and prove this out for yourself. Thank you for watching our Solomon's Gold series. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the bell. Share this video with others and check out our website at thegodculture.com. Always remember to prove all things for yourself. Yahuwah bless. Ladies and gentlemen, a special message. I am Timothy, founding member of the God Culture and Solomon's Gold series. We as a group thought it was time for me to introduce myself, as we are now bringing conferences to the Philippines, and I will be there and look forward to meeting you. For the past 2 years, the God Culture YouTube channel has received amazing support from so many, and we thank you. We just recently surpassed 4 million views in less than 2 years, and that far exceeds our expectations. Thank you all. Even via email, we have had several offers to give money to support this ministry, and until now, we have not needed. And still, for the function of our YouTube channel, we are pleased to say that we still do not need. However, we realize the importance of expanding, especially Solomon's Gold series, beyond YouTube in the Philippines, as we truly want to reach everyone we possibly can get to, with the restoration of the history of Ophir, Sheba, Tarshish, Havilah, the Garden of Eden, and the land of creation. In fact, after 2 years, no one has proven any of these findings wrong, and that is because they are truth. We are pleased to announce Rise Philippines conferences beginning May 2019 this year. We have partnered with Filipino pastor Paul Madrano, who is a pastor and Bible school director and teacher overseas. We already have more than 12 locations tentatively booked for these conferences in Luzon, May 1st through 12th, Cebu, May 14th through 17th, and Mindanao, May 18th through 20. To start, just in the month of May alone, and our intention is to continue from there. We will announce firm dates and venues as soon as possible. In efforts to bring these conferences free to the public in the Philippines, we now need your help to assist in underwriting the cost of these events, and not for the channel. Therefore, we have set up a Patreon account by which you can give monthly to this effort if you are led. And 100% of these monies will go toward conferences in the Philippines. This in no way affects the channel, and we will continue with those videos free of charge. So here's your opportunity to join the God Culture and give not just for these conferences, but also toward future conferences. And you can reach us at thegodculture@gmail.com if you wish to host a conference in your area as well. Patreon allows us to set up monthly giving levels starting at as low as $5 US per month. We are unable to set up multiple currencies or receive cash, though you can also give at the conferences. Just click the link in the description box below this video, or fast forward to the end screen of this video, and there is a give button there which hyperlinks to our Patreon page. For all who give, we will post the donors at each conference. Again, you do not have to do this in order to continue receiving our videos free of charge. But if you wish to support the effort to bring Rise Philippines conferences to the Philippines, we would appreciate the help. Yahuwah bless you and your families, and thank you again for being a part of this effort.